I was a music major in college, and I remember that sound of everybody warming up, that chaotic, crazy sound of like everybody doing their own thing. Now, not to beat a dead horse here, but I mean, it's just like, this is Greek to us. When we first begin to look at it, it just sounds like a lot of random stuff, but it's not. And we're using grammar to learn to hear the beauty, the symphony. Nice Greek roots there, right? Sun is together and phone is to hear, hearing together. It all comes together in beautiful order, okay? So we're looking at the case, number, and gender of nouns. We're seeing the declensions, patterns by which nouns change to give us this information. And we've seen that the way they do this is by changing just the last couple of letters of the word. And we've seen a first pattern, we've seen a second pattern, and today we look at a third pattern. The first pattern we saw, usually the noun will end in an alpha or eta and be feminine. The second pattern, the stems in an omicron and usually are masculine or neuter. Now today in the third declension, we'll look at the nouns that end in a consonant, and we'll see that the masculine and feminine follow a certain pattern and the neuter follows a slightly different pattern. So on to third declension. Take a look at your noun endings chart, and let's just do a little quick review. Remember, our first declension nouns are normally feminine. They end in alphas or etas, and they look like this. Arche, arches, arche, archein, archai, archon, archais, archas. Our second declension nouns could be masculine or neuter, and you can see the endings here. Lagos, lagu, lago, lagon, lagoi, lagon, lagois, lagus. Or in the neuter, we have ergon, ergu, ergo, ergon, erga, ergon, ergois, erga. Okay, and we saw we're just changing the last couple of letters of the nouns, and that's telling us the case, here, nominative, genitive, dative, or accusative, the number, whether it's singular and plural, and the gender, masculine, feminine, and neuter. Now, with the third declension, you can see that the masculine and feminine gender follow this pattern, the pattern of sarx, which happens to be feminine, but it's sarx, sarkos, sarki, sarka, sarkes, sarkon, sarksi, sarkos. And then the neuter also follows third declension like this. And the noun here is phos, which is a neuter noun. Phos, photos, photi, phos, phota, photon, phosi, phota. Let's take a closer look. Third declension nouns end in a consonant. Their stem ends in a consonant. So the stem of sarx is actually sark. So you can see we take sark and we add os, and then e, and then a, and s, and own, and this is all very straightforward except for this nominative singular form. What is this xi doing there? Well, if you think about it, sark plus sigma would be sarx, right? And that sounds like sarx, right? Because the kappa sigma makes the sound of a xi. I'm about to show you the square of stops, which is the rules by which Greeks would take two letters that make the sound of a third letter and just turn it into the third letter. Why write kappa sigma when a xi makes the exactly the same sound? Okay, so that's what that is. We'll look at that more in just a second. You can see that it happens in the dative plural as well. Sarxine. So the kappa sigma was turned into a xi. And the accusative plural is normal. All right, look at phos. The root of phos is phot. I want you to notice that the root of the word, this most fundamental part of the word on which everything is built, can be seen easily in the genitive case. It's often obscured in the nominative because strange things happen in the nominative. But in the genitive, it's nice and straightforward. We can see the nice root there, phot, and then to that we add os, and then e, and then we have the weirdness again. Now we phot a, on, phos si. You can see that we drop the tau there. Phot si, that's part of the square of stops too, actually. And then here we have phota. Okay, so there's some sort of strange things going on here in the third declension, and it has to do with the combination of consonants. So let me explain to you the square of stops. The square of stops shows what happens when consonants collide, okay? And we've seen this with the word sarks. We saw that sark actually ended in a kappa, the stem did, and then when we added the sigma of the nominative case, we got kappa sigma. Ks. Well, ks is, we could write kappa sigma, but it actually is just a ksi. So rather than write kappa sigma, the Greeks very efficiently turn that into a ksi. The square of stops is the rules by which various consonants, when consonants collide, that's a little crazy. Okay, but the rules by which various consonants collide with sigmas and thetas to make third letters. Okay, now I'm going to tell you the rule, and I understand that right off the bat this will just sound like gibberish to you, but here it is. Any labial plus sigma becomes a psi. Any velar plus sigma becomes a xi, and any dental plus sigma just becomes a sigma. Okay, now what am I talking about? Well, let's talk about labials. Labials are letters that are formed using the lips, like labials, okay? So, for example, the letter P, the letter B, beta, and the letter Phi. In each case, notice the lips are used. P, P, B, B, and F, P, beta, and Phi. Lips are used, labials. Now, add a sigma to any labial, like P sigma, ps, or beta sigma, bs, or Phi sigma, ps. In each case, it almost sounds like a psi. So here's the rule. Any labial plus sigma just becomes a psi. Very much makes sense, right? Okay. Now, velars are made in the back of the throat with the back of the tongue. And the velars are kappa, gamma, and chi. Okay? Kappa makes a k, k, k. Gamma makes a g, g, g. And he, he is aspirated, which means that air flows through. So he, kappa, gamma, he. Now add a sigma to a velar and see what happens. You get x, gs, or ch. And in each case, the Greeks just turn that into a xi. All right? Now take the dentals. The dentals are made in the front of the mouth with the tip of the tongue touching right here, right? The inside of the teeth, the dental right here, okay? So if you take the dental tau, delta, or th, and add in sigma, you get ts, you get ds, or ts, right? And in each case, that is so awkward that the Greeks just dropped the dental and turned it into a sigma. So again, the labials made with the lips, the velars made in the back of the throat, the dentals made with the tip of the tongue on this back of the teeth here. And so in each case, you add a sigma and you get either a psi, a xi, or just a sigma. Okay, so that's what we do with sigmas, and that's all there is to it. Now, thetas are not as common. The conflict that happens between the various letters and the thetas. But let's look at this just to be aware. And here's the rule. When you add a theta to a voiced or an unvoiced consonant, the letter aspirates. Okay, I know I just said gibberish again to you. Let me explain that. And by the way, I think this is really kind of cool stuff. But if you look at this chart and you look at it like looking horizontally, looking across, the unvoiced letters are p, k, and t. These are unvoiced. They just make sort of popping sounds. P, kappa, tau. But p, k, t, right? It's just sort of a little pop, right? Okay. The voiced letters are ones that also make sort of a popping sound, but you voice them. Your vocal cords are engaged. So beta, gamma, and delta. Now make the sounds of those letters. B, g, da. Do you hear that the vocal cords are involved? Where with the unvoiced letters like p, k, t, no vocal cords. With the voiced letters b, g, and da, the vocal cords get involved in the process. Okay, so again, now the rule is that any unvoiced or voiced letter aspirates when you add a theta. Okay, well, wait a minute. What is an aspirate? The aspirates are letters where the air flows through. Okay, so we have phi. See how the air is flowing? We have which it's flowing over the back of the mouth there, and that sort of guttural sound. And then we have theta. So phi, chi, and theta are aspirates. So the rule is this, that when you add a unvoiced or voiced letter, when you add theta to that letter, it just becomes the aspirated form. So p theta or beta theta or bth becomes it's aspirated. Kappa theta or gamma theta just becomes okay, so they aspirate that. They didn't like this, trying to do a stop and then the sound. Okay, tau theta or delta theta just becomes sigma theta. So again, when you add the theta to the unvoiced or voiced letter, it aspirates. That's the rule. Now that one's not as important. And let me just say about the square of stops, don't have nightmares about this. If this is sort of like blowing you away or whatever, we shall see it again and come back to it, and you'll begin to understand this. But again, we're just talking about what happens when consonants collide, right? When they come together, and in particular, when consonants collide with sigmas and with thetas. The sigmas happen a lot and are important to be able to see. The thetas are not as common, but it's just something to be aware of.
Let's take a look at some of these third declensions with some sentences. And these are sentences made entirely of third declension nouns, okay? It won't be that way, of course, in the Greek text. You'll have first, second, and third all mixed together, but to make it easier for us, I've chosen all third declension nouns. So here we have charis esosin ton patera. Charis is grace, and we see the sigma on the end, and the sigma tells us that we're looking at a nominative. So the nominative, we know, is our subject, grace. Here's our verb, saved. Here's our what? Look at this alpha. See the alpha there. So what are we looking at? What case is this? Patera. See the alpha here? Accusative case, which means this is our object. Grace saved the Father. So, subject, verb, object. Nice and simple. Here is a somewhat more interesting example because it contains all of the case endings. Also, you'll notice that third declension nouns can be a little tricky because you don't know if they're masculine or feminine or neuter. You just have to know that so you know whether to follow the masculine-feminine column or the neuter column here. So, here we have the word pistis. Pistis soze andros kai gunaikos te duname tes charitas. Okay, where's our subject here? Well, pistis is actually a feminine noun, and this ending in the feminine is nominative. So there's our subject, faith. Here's our verb, object, saves. Faith saves what? Men and women. These are acting as the object. And you can see I put this in nice English word order to make it easy for us. But andros and gunaikos are both accusative. Now, andros, of course, is masculine. Here's your accusative plural ending. So this is plural, not man, but min. Here's your feminine accusative plural ending, gunaikos. So this is feminine plural accusative. Okay, and then faith saves men and women, te duname. In the power, by the power, with the power, any of that is fair game, okay, with the dative. Here's our iota ending. Duname is another feminine noun. So here it is, by the power. Tes charitas. Charitas. Charis is also a feminine noun, so here's our ending. Actually, that one is the same all the way across, but clearly then that's a genitive singular. I guess I could tack the endings on here, or the tags on here for you in case that helps. But so faith saves men and women by the power of grace. Now notice we left out the article in translation. Once again, Greek and English use the article differently. More about that to come. We'll find there aren't as many third declension nouns in John 1 as there were first and second declension nouns, but here we come across one in John chapter 1 verse 4 where we find this phrase, he zoe ein ta phos. The life was the light. Now this is a to be verb. This was that is an example again of predicate nominative. Anytime you have a to be verb and two nouns, this is that, they'll both be in the nominative case. So here we have phos, which looks just like this, right? This is one of our paradigmatic nouns, okay? So we know this is nominative. It could be accusative by the form here, but because it's predicate nominative, we know this is nominative case. The life was the light. Now, that one's a little tricky. This one's a little easier. Ta phos in te skatia phine. The light in the darkness is shining. Now notice the word order is odd to our English ear. Where's the subject? Well, it's the light again, right? The light is doing the shining. The light is shining in the darkness. So again, we have another nominative case right here. Dropping down to verse 6, we find this noun anima. Now, anima is actually a mot stem noun. These are always neuter. They are always third declension. And the stem of anima is actually animat, as if this were a tau here. So animat. But in the nominative case and the accusative, of course, in the neuter declension here, they just drop the tau at the end. So it's just anima. So this is the nominative case, named to him John. All right, looking on down here, we have he came in order to be a witness, peri tu photos. Peri, hopefully you recognize that part of speech, right, by now? Peri. Peri is a preposition. It's colored blue. Peri, with the accusative, means around. With the genitive, it means concerning or about. So in this case, we have peri tu photos. So what case is this? Well, we get two clues, because again, our article helps us. That looks genitive, and this looks like genitive third declension, right? Os. So we have peri with the genitive means concerning the light. Moving on down here. That one, uk ein ekenas taphos. That one was not the light. Okay, not he was the light. Once again, we have predicate nominative, a to be verb here. And so this is nominative case. The light he was not. But he came to bear witness, peri tu photos, concerning the light. Exactly the same phrase that we had here. So it's peri with the genitive case, which means concerning. So we have our genitive here. We have our clue with our article here. So genitive just plastered all over this thing. Verses 12 and 13, we have another prepositional phrase, eis ta anima. Now, when you see a preposition, you know it will determine the case of its object. Eis always takes the accusative. So we know that anima here has to be accusative. I'll point out again that anima is this mot stem noun. Let me just show you what that looks like. Anima, anamatas, anamati, anima, anamata, anamaton, anamasi, anamata. These mot stems are always neuter, and they always have this mot, except in the nominative and accusative form here. But notice all these mots. Down here in the dative, we have anamasi. What happened? It was anamat si. And remember, tau plus sigma, a dental and a sigma, according to our square of stops, just becomes a sigma. So we have a little square of stops action going on there. All right, moving on down to this verse. Now look at this. These people are not born ek thalematos sarkos, out of the will of flesh. Here we have a prepositional phrase, ek thalematos. Well, ek, it turns out, always takes the genitive. So that helps us out on this. So ek thalematos means out of the will, and this has to be genitive, and sure enough, there it is. Oh, by the way, look, another mot stem noun. Thelema, will, is also a mot stem noun. So thalematos, there's our ending. Not of the will sarkos, genitive, right? So we have our our genitive keyword of. And these people are, nor are they born ek thelematos andros. Ek thelematos, here we have thelema, another, the mot stem, just like we saw before. So ek with the genitive, not out of the will, andros. Remember, aner is man, so here's our genitive form here. Let me just pull up the right chart here. So, not out of the will of man, andros, genitive, so we use the keyword of. Verse 14, the Word became flesh. Okay, this is actually a to be verb. This is another case of predicate nominative, but hopefully we recognize sarx by now because, again, that's our paradigmatic noun. So sarx became the Word, or in this case, it should be translated, the Word became flesh. Sarx, nominative case there. And here we have a similar sort of thing. The glory was like the only begotten para patros. Para with what case here? Omicron sigma, beginning to recognize that now. Patros genitive, right? Para with the genitive here. There we have para with the genitive means from. So it's the only begotten from the Father. Para patros. Full of grace. Now again, I give it away with the of here, but charitas. Again, another example of our genitive case, charitas. Full of grace. Now down to verse 16, we find ektu pleromatos. Out of the fullness, out of his fullness we all received. Ek with the what case there? Hopefully this is getting so easy for you. Pleromatos, we recognize that as a third declension genitive. Here we have our clue again with the article that it's genitive as well. But ek always takes the genitive, right? So out of his fullness. Let's move along here. We all received, and now here, look at all these examples of grace. Charis is the word. Charin, charitas, and charis all together. So let's look at how these various endings work. Okay, we received grace, charin. Well, this is a weird ending for third declension for us. Let me just pop up the declension of grace here. Notice that the accusative is a little different here for grace. Charis in the accusative here is new. Normally we're used to seeing just an alpha there, but here it's new. So we received grace, so that makes sense. This is receiving the action. We receive grace, and then we have a preposition with the word grace, anti charitas. Okay, right? You get it by now, right? This is a genitive form right there. And here it is, just in case you're questioning me, charitas. And anti takes the genitive, as we can see here. Anti, against, instead of for grace. It's kind of a hard thing to translate or even to understand maybe exactly what John had in mind here. We received grace on top of grace, grace instead of grace. It's hard to know exactly what this means. That's for the exegetes to figure out. And then look down here. The law through Moses was given. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. So here clearly the subject, charis. So it's in the nominative case. Our sigma ending there, right? Which we are getting used to, right? It's charis. So, grace and truth came to be through Jesus Christ. In verse 18, and actually there are not that many more third declension nouns in John 1, so let's buzz through them pretty quickly. It's really all just repetition of what we've already been seeing. Here we have in the bosom of the Father, so tu patros. Recognize the ending, os. Here we have another genitive ending, right? Patros, so it's of the Father, keyword of. Now down to verse 26, I baptize in hudati, in water. Recognize the iota ending, that's our dative, which we would expect after the preposition in always takes the dative, right? I baptize in hudati, in water. And then looking down here, I'm not worthy to loosen the strap, tan himanta. Recognize the alpha ending there, himanta. So this is our accusative case, And it makes sense that we loosen the strap. It's receiving the object of the verb, or the object. It's receiving the action of the verb. So I'm unworthy to loosen the strap. And then we recognize this ending, right, as genitive of the sandal. So our os ending tells us again, genitive case. Notice also a mot stem noun, hupadematas. Hupadematas. In verse 30 here, a man is coming, aner erchetai. Now, aner is one that has sort of a strange nominative form. We've seen this before. We would expect a sigma, but there is no sigma. It's just aner, okay? But andros, andri, andra. The endings look normal moving on down. It's just this nominative singular that's often trouble. I think of it this way. Single males are trouble. If that helps you, use it. In verse 32, I have come to see the Spirit. So even in English, we can see that Spirit is receiving the action of this verb. I have seen the Spirit. So we would expect this to be the object, or in Greek, this would be, of course, our accusative case, pneuma. Now, this is actually a neuter noun. It's another one of our mot stem nouns. Just like with anima, when we have this mot stem nouns in the nominative and accusative case, the tau just drops. And again, we wouldn't know if it was nominative or accusative except for the context. And here the context is pretty clear, right? I have come to see the Spirit. So this is accusative case. All right, moving down to verse 33 here, he baptizes in hudati, in water. In takes the dative, as we've seen again and again. And then at the end of verse 33, that he is the one baptizing in the Spirit. Again, in, right, takes the dative. So we have in pneumati. And here's that mot stem noun nice and clear, right? So pneumati, in the Spirit. Then our final third declension noun in John 1 is in verse 44, where we have, again, a prepositional phrase, out of the city. Ek takes the genitive, remember? So let's just shove this out of the way. Ek with the genitive means from or out of. Okay? And here we have this sort of odd form of the genitive, omega sigma instead of omicron sigma, but that won't throw us off because we're getting so good at this, right? So ek tes palaos. Notice, again, when we get to the article, this will help us. Tells us it's feminine, gives us another clue that it's genitive. So, Greek is not about just recognizing one sign, but it's the way all of the signs sort of come together. You get all kinds of clues. So we'll learn to see these. And don't despair if this is overwhelming you a little bit right now. It's a lot, I admit it. But as you begin to see these clues sort of build together, it becomes easier and easier to recognize what's going on in a Greek sentence. Soon we shall hear the symphony.
By Jove, I think we've done it. Or I guess to be more Greek, I would say by Zeus, I think we've done it. In any case, we have seen the patterns of change that nouns go through to show us their case, number, and gender. We've seen that really they just follow three primary patterns of change, and that these changes have to do with the last couple of letters. These letters shift around to tell us the case, number, and gender of every noun. The case would be nominative if it's the subject, genitive to show possession, dative to show indirect object, and accusative to show the object. The number, of course, would be singular or plural, and every noun will be either masculine, feminine, or neuter. Okay, and so we've seen these patterns, and we're beginning to understand how the Greeks use these little patterns of change to show us the order within the sentences. Now again, for us as English speakers, we're a little baffled because we're used to word order and little helping words to explain things to us. Greeks looked at these little patterns of change. And so that's what we're learning, that's what we're mastering. Let's move on now to something just really cool. We're going to put this all together with the article.